Elsa Reinhardt arrived in Nebraska expecting locks. She had prepared herself for them during the whole journey west. First on the military ship that brought the German prisoners across the Atlantic, then in the train car with painted windows, then in the canvas-covered truck that carried 12 women through a country so wide and open that it made her uneasy before anyone had spoken a word. In Germany, everything important had been behind a door. Offices, food, records, permission, punishment. Men in uniforms had kept keys like little pieces of God, and people learned to lower their voices when metal turned inside a lock. So when the truck stopped at Camp Ashford on a dry September afternoon in 1945, Elsa sat with both hands folded over her small canvas bag and waited for the proper sound of captivity. A gate clanging shut, a guard shouting numbers, a chain dragged across wood. Instead, the first thing she saw was a screen door propped open with a brick. Beyond it stood a long white building that looked less like a prison than a schoolhouse that had been tired for many years. There was a flagpole in the yard, a mess hall to the left, 2 barracks beyond it, and a low barn at the far edge of the property. A dirt road ran past the camp and continued straight across the open land until it disappeared into fields of cut corn. There was no wall high enough to hide the horizon. There was a wire fence, yes, but it was low in places and leaned where the wind had pushed against it. One gate stood open because a young American private was replacing a hinge with a hammer and a mouthful of nails. A dog slept under the water pump. Nobody seemed interested in waking it. The women did not move when the truck tailgate dropped. A military policeman stepped forward with a clipboard under one arm. He was tall, perhaps 30, with sleeves rolled neatly to the elbow and a face that looked as if it had learned patience from weather rather than from books. "Ladies," he said in careful German. "One at a time, please. Bring your papers." His accent was poor. His manner was not. Elsa watched the others climb down before her. Some looked frightened. Some looked insulted. Hilda Krantz, who had once worked in a field communications office near Munich and considered fear a private weakness, stepped onto the dirt with her chin raised high enough to challenge the sky. Elsa came last. The American looked at her papers. "Elsa Reinhardt," he read. "Yes." "Age, 27. "Yes." "Former auxiliary clerk, medical supply section." She looked at his hands. They held the papers without theatrical disgust, without curiosity, without pleasure. "Yes." He marked something on the clipboard. "I am Staff Sergeant Samuel Hayes. You will be housed in Barrack 2. Roll call at 7 in the morning and 7 in the evening. Work assignments after breakfast. No one crosses the white boundary posts without permission. Sick call is after morning count. Mail requests go to the office on Fridays." Elsa waited for the rest. He handed back her papers. "That is all for now." She did not take them immediately. "There is no search." There was one at the port. "No escort." "To the Barrack?" He glanced at the white building, which stood less than 40 yards away. "You can see it from here." She looked at him then, properly. In his face, there was no trick she could identify, which made her distrust him more. The women walked toward the Barrack in a loose line. No guard marched behind them. Nobody counted their steps. The open road remained visible to the right. Elsa felt it there like a hand resting lightly on her back. Inside Barrack 2, 12 cots had been placed in 2 rows. Each had a folded blanket, a towel, a tin cup, and a small paper card with a number written in blue ink. At the far end of the room, near the door to the washroom, a nail had been driven into the wall. On the nail hung a key. Hilda saw it first and laughed once under her breath. "Americans," she said, "either stupid or theatrical." One of the younger women, Annalise, crossed herself. Elsa set her bag on cot 7 and looked at the key. It was ordinary brass, worn at the teeth, hung where any hand could take it. A prison key in plain sight was worse than a prison key hidden in a belt. A hidden key told you where power lived. An open one made you wonder what would happen when you touched it. That night, Elsa did not sleep much. She listened to unfamiliar sounds through the thin Barrack walls. Crickets, trucks passing on the road, a man laughing somewhere near the kitchen, the flag rope tapping the pole in the wind. No boot stopped outside the door. No lock turned. At dawn, the women rose before the bell because prisoners trained by fear do not need bells. They stood in line outside while Sergeant Hayes read their names from the clipboard. He mispronounced 3. Elsa corrected him on the 4th. "Reinhardt," she said. "Not Reinhardt." He looked at the paper, then at her. "Reinhardt," he repeated, closer this time. He marked the correction. No anger. No warning. No reminder of her place. That unsettled her more than a reprimand would have. After breakfast, they were assigned work. Laundry, kitchen, sewing, farm detail, office sorting. Elsa expected to be sent where no judgment was required. Instead, Hayes stopped before her with a stack of forms. You wrote English on your intake paper. I learned it at school. Can you keep records? I kept medical supply records. Then you can help in the camp office. Names, parcels, work credits, mail slips. Nothing complicated, but it needs to be legible. Hilda, standing nearby, muttered, "He gives a prisoner the lists." Hayes heard her. His face did not change. "I give work to whoever can do it." Elsa followed him to the office. It was a square room in the same white building with the open screen door. There were 2 desks, a map of the county, a stove not yet needed, and shelves full of labeled boxes. On one wall hung a calendar with a picture of a red barn in snow. Beneath it, on a hook beside the door, hung another key ring. Elsa stopped just inside. Hayes placed the forms on the desk. "That cabinet locks," he said, pointing. "Personnel records stay there. The mailbag comes at noon. If I am not here, you log each parcel by name and number. Mistakes mean someone does not get what belongs to her, so take your time. You are leaving me alone with records? I am going to check the south fence. You are not concerned?" He paused. "Should I be?" It was not said sharply. That was the difficulty. A sharp question could be answered with defiance. His invited truth. Elsa looked at the cabinet, then at the key ring. "In Germany," she said, "no officer would leave a prisoner alone with files." Hayes considered that. This is Nebraska. He left before she could decide whether he had made a joke. For the first 3 days, Elsa looked for the mechanism behind the looseness. She watched the guards and found discipline, but not cruelty. They counted prisoners exactly, yet did not shout unless weather or distance required it. They inspected work, but did not sneer at women who learned slowly. They issued soap, repaired shoes, sent a feverish prisoner to the infirmary in a jeep, and allowed the chaplain to hold Sunday service in the mess hall, where the windows remained open because the room smelled of coffee and floor polish. The camp was not careless. That became clear by Thursday. Tools were signed out. Parcels were opened in view of 2 people. Letters were censored by rule, not mood. Boundaries were marked. Lights went out at 9. Yet the ordinary things remained strangely unguarded. A shovel leaning against the barn. A kitchen door standing open while pies cooled under cloth. A truck with its keys left above the visor because Private Miller had forgotten them there, and nobody seemed to believe the world would end. A road that did not move, did not hide, did not threaten, simply waited in the sun. By the second week, Elsa knew the camp schedule better than some of the Americans. At 7, roll call. At 7:30, breakfast. At 8, work detail. At noon, mail truck. At 3, farm wagon from the Henderson place. At 6, supper. At 7, count again. She learned the names too. Private Miller, who forgot keys but never forgot extra milk for the infirmary. Corporal Brooks, who sang badly while carrying laundry. Lieutenant Adams, who wore his authority like a coat he intended to keep clean. And Sergeant Hayes, who noticed everything and made little noise about it. He was from Iowa, not Nebraska. His father raised corn and hogs outside a town called Winterset. He had been in France, then Germany, then assigned to POW administration because, as he put it, somebody decided I could read forms without losing my temper. Elsa did not ask what he had seen in Europe. He did not ask what she had believed. Their conversations stayed practical, which made them possible. "Parcel for Krantz," he said one afternoon. Elsa checked the slip. 2 pair stockings, 1 comb, for photographs. No food. Log it. She will complain. She may do that after she signs. Another day, he placed a box of pencils on her desk. "For office use. You give prisoners pencils too easily. You write better with them than I do. This is not a high standard." He looked at her for a moment. Then the corner of his mouth moved. "No, ma'am. It is not." She should not have enjoyed that. She told herself she did not. Hilda noticed anyway. "You speak to him as if he is a neighbor," Hilda said one evening while they folded blankets. "He is the sergeant. He is the enemy's sergeant. The war is over." Hilda pulled a blanket hard enough to snap the air. "Tell that to the graves." Elsa said nothing, because Hilda's brother had died somewhere near Aachen, and grief did not become false just because it was inconvenient. Still, Hilda grew restless in a way that made the barack colder. She watched the road. She asked about train schedules. She volunteered for barn work because the barn sat nearest to the boundary posts. She made jokes about American softness and then stopped joking when nobody answered. On Friday of the third week, the mail truck brought 3 letters for the women and a small parcel for Annalise. It also brought a list from Washington concerning repatriation procedures. Elsa typed copies under Hayes's supervision. "Some will go before Christmas," he said. "Back to Germany?" "Yes." Hilda stood near the office stove repairing a torn sleeve. Her needle stopped. "What Germany?" she asked. Hayes looked at her. "The one that is left." Hilda laughed without amusement. "And if nothing is left for us? Then you start with what is. That is American advice. That is farm advice." Elsa kept her eyes on the typewriter, but the words stayed with her longer than they should have. That evening, after count, she walked alone toward the white boundary post near the barn. No one stopped her. The sun had gone low, and the cut fields beyond the road shone dull gold in the last light. A wind moved across them with a clean, dry sound. She stood 6 feet from the post. Then 4. Then close enough to touch it. The road beyond was empty. A prisoner could run. Not forever, perhaps not even far, but she could step past the white paint and prove that the open space was not imaginary. "Miss Reinhardt." Hayes's voice came from behind her. She turned too quickly. He stood near the barn with 2 feed buckets in his hands. "I did not cross," she said. "I saw. You were watching. I was feeding horses." It was true. The buckets were full. He walked toward the barn. At the door he stopped and looked back. "The rule is the post. Not where I stand. You trust a painted piece of wood?" "No." "What then?" He shifted one bucket to the other hand. "I trust that you know where it is." She had no answer ready. For most of her adult life, rules had been things forced into people by fear. His version placed the burden inside her and left it there. She found it almost indecent. 2 nights later, the storm came. It began after supper with heat lightning over the fields and a smell like metal in the air. By lights out, rain struck the barack roof so hard that conversation became useless. The women lay awake listening to thunder roll across the flat country. At some point near midnight, the bell at the horse barn rang once. Then again. Elsa sat up. The sound was not the camp bell. It was smaller, frantic, pulled by motion rather than by hand. Across the aisle, Hilda was already out of bed. "What are you doing?" Elsa whispered. "Nothing." Hilda pulled on her shoes. Elsa saw the shape under her coat. A bundle. Too square to be clothing. Too heavy by the way she carried it. "Hilda, sleep." Then Elsa saw the brass key in her hand. The barack key from the nail. Hilda moved toward the washroom door at the rear, not the front. The rear door opened toward the barn path and the shallow ditch beyond the boundary post. In the confusion of the storm, with guards busy securing roofs and animals, a woman might reach the road before anyone knew she had gone. Elsa stood. "You cannot." Hilda turned, eyes bright in the dark. "I can because they are fools. They will find you. Perhaps. Perhaps not. There are Germans in this country. Farms. Towns. Names that sound like ours. I will not wait for them to send me back to ashes." "You gave your word." Hilda's face twisted. "To Americans? To yourself." The words came before Elsa had time to make them gentle. Hilda stepped closer. "You think they respect you because they let you touch paper. You think a key on a nail makes you a person. It makes you bait." The barn bell rang again, harder this time. A horse screamed. The sound cut through the rain and changed the room. Several women rose. Someone called for the guard. Outside, a shout answered from the direction of the mess hall. Hilda looked toward the rear door. Elsa looked at the key. If she shouted, Hilda would be stopped. If she did nothing, Hilda might escape or die in the storm, and every open door in the camp would close by morning. The women would be searched, marched, watched, punished, not because the Americans were cruel, but because trust once broken becomes expensive to rebuild. Elsa thought of the white boundary post. The rule is the post, not where I stand. Hilda pushed the rear door open and rain entered like thrown gravel. Elsa followed. The yard was chaos. Wind drove water sideways. A section of tin roofing had peeled from the barn and was beating against the wall. One of the horses had kicked through a stall board and tangled its halter rope around a lower beam. The animal fought blindly, making the bell rope jerk each time it reared. Near the office, two Americans struggled with a loose shutter. Another ran toward the mess hall. Nobody saw Hilda slip along the barn wall with the bundle under her arm. Elsa ran after her. Mud pulled at her shoes. Rain blinded her. Twice she nearly fell. Hilda reached the boundary post and kept going. Hilda, stop. Hilda turned only because the ditch beyond the post had filled with water, and she had to judge the jump. In that second, lightning showed her face, wet, furious, frightened. You can come with me, Hilda said. Elsa stopped at the post. The road lay 20 yards beyond the ditch. Past it were fields, darkness, and the idea of disappearance. Behind her were barracks, records, counts, rules, Americans, open doors, and a kind of expectation she had not asked to receive. The barn bell rang again. Elsa looked back. The trapped horse struck the wall so hard the whole side shook. Private Miller was trying to reach the stall, but the door had jammed from the inside. Hayes was not there. He had gone in the jeep before supper, taking Annalise to the county hospital with a fever that had worsened by the hour. The tool shed stood between the barn and the office. Unlocked. Elsa knew because everything here seemed designed to insult suspicion. She held out her hand to Hilda. Give me the key. No. The barn key. It is on that ring too. Hilda glanced at the bundle. Elsa stepped past the white post. For one moment, both women understood what that meant. Not escape. Not yet. But violation. A line crossed by choice. Elsa moved closer. Hilda, if that animal breaks its leg, they will shoot it. If the barn catches, men will be hurt. Give me the key. Why do you care? Because someone left it where we could reach it. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Hilda looked toward the road. Elsa did not know what would happen until it happened. Hilda threw the key ring at her feet. Then be useful to them, she said. She turned to run. Elsa picked up the keys from the mud and ran back toward the barn. By the time she reached the door, Miller had blood on one cheek from flying wood, and Corporal Brooks was trying to pry the warped frame with a shovel. The side door, Elsa shouted in English. Brooks looked at her as if she had appeared from the rain itself. Key, she said. I have key. He hesitated for less than a second, then followed. The side door opened into the feed passage. Elsa found the right key on the third try because her hands were shaking. Inside, the air smelled of wet hay, fear, and hot animal breath. The horse screamed again. Miller climbed through the stall gap. Brooks held the lantern. Elsa saw the rope, saw the knot tightened against the beam, saw the knife in Miller's belt, and took it before asking permission. Hold the head, she said. What? The head. Hold him, or he breaks you. Miller obeyed because urgency has its own authority. Elsa cut the rope. The horse lurched forward, struck the gate, then stopped, trembling. Brooks grabbed the halter. Miller swore once, softly, not at her, not at anyone. Just because the body sometimes must say what the heart cannot. When it was done, they stood in the passage breathing hard while rain hammered the roof. Then Hayes entered from the far door, soaked through, hat gone, face pale with cold and anger held under discipline. His eyes went first to the horse, then to Miller's bleeding cheek, then to Elsa, then to the keys in her hand. No one spoke. Elsa walked to him and placed the ring in his palm. I crossed the boundary, she said. Hayes closed his fingers around the keys. Why? She looked toward the open side door. Hilda Krantz tried to leave. She had these. I followed her past the post. She threw them down. I came back because the horse was trapped. Brooks said. She opened the side door, Sergeant. We needed it. Hayes did not take his eyes from Elsa. Where is Krantz? Elsa turned toward the road. I do not know. The answer cost more than she expected. Hayes looked out into the storm. Then he gave orders, quick and exact. 2 men to the road. 1 to the north field. Wake Lieutenant Adams. Bring lanterns. No rifles unless necessary. Nobody fires into rain at a frightened woman. That last sentence stayed in Elsa's mind. Not because it was tender. It was not. It was disciplined. Hilda was found an hour later less than a mile away, ankle twisted in a drainage ditch, bundle soaked, pride ruined beyond repair. She had not reached the road that led to town. She had not reached freedom. She had reached mud, corn stubble, and the end of an idea. By morning, every prisoner in Barrack 2 expected consequences. They stood at roll call under a washed-clean sky, eyes fixed forward, waiting for the old logic to return. One woman breaks trust, all pay. One hand touches the key, every door locks. One person fails, everyone becomes guilty. Lieutenant Adams read the report. His mouth was stern. His uniform was dry. He looked like a man who preferred rules because they saved him from improvising justice. Hilda Krantz violated camp boundary, stole camp keys, removed food stores, and attempted escape, he said. She will be confined pending review. The women waited. Adams looked at the line. No other prisoner is charged. The silence changed shape. Hilda, seated on a chair by the office with her ankle wrapped, stared at the ground. Adams continued. Barack key remains where it was. Work assignments remain. Roll call remains. Privileges remain unless individually lost. He folded the paper. Dismissed. The women did not move at once, because mercy can be as shocking as punishment when a person has been trained for collective blame. Hayes approached Elsa after the others had gone to breakfast. You told the truth when a lie would have been easier, he said. I also crossed the line. Yes. What happens for that? What should happen? The question irritated her. You are the sergeant. And you are the one who crossed. She looked past him toward the road, now harmless in daylight. I should lose boundary privilege for a week. There is no such written privilege. Then write it. For the first time since she had known him, Hayes almost smiled fully. All right. 1 week. You stay inside the inner yard unless on assigned work. She nodded. And Miss Reinhardt. She looked back. The horse is alive. She swallowed once. I know. Private Miller says his cheek would look worse if you had not taken the knife when you did. He was holding it wrong. I will tell him that gently. He should learn quickly. Horses are not patient with American confidence. This time Hayes did smile, and it made him look younger than war had allowed him to be. After that night, something changed in the camp, though nothing visible moved. The key still hung on the nail. The screen door still opened and closed with its tired spring. The road still ran past the white boundary posts. Tools still leaned where men had left them, and the barn remained unlocked during work hours. What changed was Elsa's understanding of those things. The open door was not ignorance. The key was not bait. The road was not proof of weakness. The Americans had built a prison, yes, but inside it they had left room for a person to meet herself. That was more frightening than a lock, because a lock tells you the guard is responsible. Trust tells you that you are. In November, repatriation orders came for 6 of the women, including Elsa. By then, the fields had been cut clean, the air had turned sharp, and the camp stove smoked every morning before breakfast. Hilda was walking again, quieter than before, though not softer. She and Elsa never spoke of the storm except once, when Hilda stopped beside her cot the night before departure. You should have come, Hilda said. Elsa folded a shirt into her bag. No. You do not even wonder? I wonder every day. Hilda studied her. Then why? Elsa looked at the key hanging by the washroom door. Because I wanted to know what kind of person I was when the door was open. Hilda had no answer for that. Or perhaps she had too many. The next morning, the 6 women stood by the truck with their bags. Lieutenant Adams checked the list. Private Miller loaded parcels. Corporal Brooks made a poor joke about German winters and was ignored by everyone with dignity. Hayes came last, carrying a small envelope. He handed it to Elsa. Your work credit balance. Receipts included. Also a letter of conduct for the repatriation office. She opened the envelope enough to see the papers inside. You wrote this? Yes. What does it say? That you kept accurate records, assisted during an emergency, and conducted yourself honorably. The word sat between them longer than either intended. Honorably. In Germany, that word had been shouted by men who confused obedience with virtue. Here, it had been written quietly by a man who had watched her when nobody else was close enough to stop her. Thank you, she said. Hayes nodded. You earned it. The truck engine started. Elsa looked once more at the camp. The white building. The open screen door. The barn roof repaired after the storm. The road that had frightened her by asking nothing aloud. Sergeant Hayes. Yes. When you leave a key where prisoners can reach it, many things can happen. I know. Why do it? He put his hands in his coat pockets and looked toward the fields before answering. My father never locked our barn unless there was weather coming. Said a lock keeps out a thief, but it also teaches the honest man he was suspected first. That is farm advice? Yes, ma'am. She almost smiled. America has much farm advice. Most of what we know came from trying not to starve. The truck driver called for them to board. Elsa held the envelope against her coat. In Germany, when I teach again, I will remember this place. You were a teacher? Before the war found better uses for everyone. Hayes looked at her, as if he had discovered a piece of the record that should have been written earlier. Then Germany will need you. The simplicity of it struck her harder than praise. She climbed into the truck. As it pulled away, she did not wave at first. Then, when they passed the boundary post, she lifted one hand. Hayes lifted his in return. The camp grew smaller behind them. The road widened ahead. Years later, in a rebuilt schoolroom outside Würzburg, Elsa Reinhardt kept a brass key on a nail beside the classroom door. The children noticed it, of course. Children notice everything adults pretend is ordinary. One boy asked why she did not keep it in her desk. Elsa looked at the key, then at the rows of faces before her. Some had fathers who did not come home. Some had mothers who still saved string and bread crusts. All of them had inherited a country where too many people claimed they had only followed orders. She could have given a simple answer about convenience. Instead, she said, because a locked door is not the only way to keep a room safe. The boy frowned. What is the other way? Elsa took up a piece of chalk. By becoming the kind of person who does not steal what is trusted to him. The class grew quiet in the thoughtful way children become quiet when they sense the lesson has left the page. On the blackboard, she wrote a sentence in English first, then German beneath it. A person is proven when no one is watching. She did not tell them about the storm at Camp Ashford, not that day. She did not describe the white posts, the open road, the frightened horse, the woman in the ditch, or the American sergeant who had understood that strength was not always the hand closing around a prisoner's arm. Sometimes strength was a key left visible. Sometimes it was a door left open. Sometimes it was a nation victorious enough to feed its enemies, disciplined enough to judge one person at a time, and confident enough to expect decency before demanding fear. Elsa placed the chalk down and looked at the children. Now, she said, write your names carefully. A name is something you must learn to carry well. They bent over their papers. Outside, the schoolyard gate stood open in the morning light. Thank you so much for watching this story with us. If this video sparked your interest, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring ancient history together. And if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this next one right here. Click on the screen to watch it now.